I'm sure that by now most of you know about the situation with the Marine that strangled a homeless person in the New York City subway. This news made headlines around the world, even here in Romania. We heard about it. And I'm not going to comment much on it because it's been talked to death, and I'm pretty sure you've heard about it in the news. I will say, though, that it's interesting that some news outlets have zoomed in on the Marine in order to ignore the fact that there were two other people there. There's a lot to say about that, but it's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is the reaction that some people have regarding this event, which is something that I find quite bizarre and also equally concerning. And that is due to the fact that the Marine is going to surrender himself to the authorities in order to face trial and decide whether or not what he did is within the confines of the law or not. And there have been various websites that are gathering money for this person's legal defense. And you have Tim Pool posting something which went viral, 500,000 people seen it. And is the fact that if a New York City liberal gets arrested for defending themselves from a murderer, they go to jail. I don't care who you are, you chose to live in this place. I think it's funny. Live by the sword, you chose to live in this city. Why would I donate to urban liberals who choose to live this way? Dude, if you walk into a burning building, don't call out for me for help if you get burned. I honestly doubt that Tim Pool is the type of individual that would rush into a burning building to save people. I think he would rather film it and talk about how civil war is coming. But all jokes aside, that Marine looked like the person that he would run into a burning building. Right? So there are several factors here that I want to talk about. The first one is that this is not just Tim Pool. Like, a lot of people on the internet are saying, well, you chose to live there, so suffer the consequences. I want to say that Russia, during the Cold War, tried to push propaganda in the United States. They called it active measures. And they weren't able to divide the United States as much as the woke ideology has divided them now, to the point where you look at another citizen and you say, oh, well, you chose to live in a city, so everything that happens to you is well deserved. It's a very bizarre thing, especially when I would assume that if Tim Pool was in a train and someone threatened him, he probably would be upset if no one does anything, right? Like if no one tries to stop the assailant. In fact, I do remember that on the Timcast in the past, there were cases where he talked about women in the subway having crimes committed against them. And then the next question is like, well, why didn't anyone do anything? And the reason is that when you try to do something, it can happen that you just try to restrain the person and you can apply lethal force. It can happen that you can try to help someone else, but then you get in legal trouble. And then you have people on the internet saying that you deserve it just because you were in that city, right? So that is the first level of concern that I have. The second level of concern is the fact that people like Tim Pool never go with the subway, right? And this leads me to the second point, is that moving away from a city is not an option for everyone. I mean, if you're a rich person, sure, you can easily move away from a city. But if you're middle class, it's a lot more difficult, especially when you have family there, when you have connections. Like, for example, if I were to move away from my city, it would be very problematic because my wife has a job in this city. So, like, she would have to move as well. It's not an opportunity for everyone to be able to just pack up and leave. And this is not the first time that I hear the Tim Pool give certain suggestions that is difficult for other people to follow, and sometimes he doesn't follow themselves. Like, for example, during the riots that happened in the United States, he was like, well, police officers should just quit. You know, they should stand by their convictions. I believe he also said the same about nurses that didn't like the current mandates in the system. It's like, oh, well, nurses should just quit. But then when YouTube changes its TOS and forces people to not talk about certain subjects that Tim Pool used to talk about, like, for example, the elections or the measures regarding the pandemic, well, all of a sudden he complies, right? Like, he doesn't hold firm to his convictions, which, by the way, like, is something that I, as a content creator, do understand. Like, if the platform adds new TOS and you want to use the platform, you have to follow the guidelines, and the guidelines are public. Like, everyone knows that if you're watching YouTube, you're not going to hear anything about this subject, right? But, like, you can't advocate other people to leave their job if you yourself, who is a millionaire, isn't willing to leave your own job yourself. Like, this is a little bit hypocritical, right? So, that's something that I find interesting. But, again, like, the whole problem is, like, how did people vote? Like, do we even know that he voted Democrat? And do we even know that he voted for a politician that would crack down on people that defend themselves? And secondly, like, did he actually defend himself? Because this is, like, something that's... I mean, I seen the video, right? But I don't know the legislation in New York, because this is important. Like, we're not talking about morality here. We're not talking about how things should be or how you would prefer them to be, because I understand that the homeless person had a criminal record. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, like, the law in New York City, which I genuinely do not know if you're allowed to use lethal force to someone who just uses verbal abuse. And in this case, like, he did threaten people, but... right? Like, despite the fact that he threatened people, he didn't have a gun, he didn't have a knife, he didn't grab someone, he wasn't... I mean, in Romania, like in this situation, where he wasn't an imminent threat, you wouldn't be allowed to do what the Marine did. Now, I understand that the Marine didn't want to end this person's life, but still, like, if you drive a car and you hit someone by accident, you still are in legal trouble, even though you didn't want to do it, right? So, I do not know the law in New York City, but there's going to be a trial. However, what I do know is that giving money to a person to have legal defense, I don't see the problem in that. I genuinely don't. Like, even criminals deserve legal defense. And if someone should go to prison for 3 years, then the lawyer should make sure that he goes for 3 and not for 4, right? So, it's just like the mindset, all right? Like, things are so political that even when I asked on my stream, like, what is the law in New York City, people got infuriated at me because I don't automatically cast moral judgment on what happened. And I understand why, because, again, like, the media tries to obfuscate, like, they zoom in on the Marine, they ignored the fact that there were other people there, they tried to racialize, they ignored the fact that there were other people of different races there. Like, all of that is, you know, just complete propaganda. But And the fact that this specific case is being brought up when, like, it's New York City, there's probably murders every day, and we never hear about those, right? Like, all of these things together, like, I understand. But it's gotten to a point where you can't ask questions, right? Like, if you're even a little bit inquisitive about something, and you're like, well, maybe there is a case there. Like, I don't know if he's going to be found guilty or not, but I can see, you know, like, depending on the law in that state, okay. And secondly, it's like, you have individuals that say, well, he lived in a city, he deserves it. So now you have, like, two people in the United States, right? You have the people that live in the middle of nowhere, and apparently they get swatted on a daily basis, and then you have the people that live in a city and they deserve it. It's just, I don't know, like, I mean, this definitely doesn't unite people, right? This definitely causes a division, because then the people in the city, why would they care about you, you know? But yeah, this is not about Tim Pool. I think, like, he is echoing what a lot of other people are saying. It's an interesting take, like, everyone should leave the city. And the thing is, like, let's assume for the sake of the argument that everyone does leave the city. Where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go to Tim Pool's place, right? Like, they're going to go to wherever he moved, and they're going to flood that particular area, and then they're going to bring the city there. Because, like, it's not that the city is this mythical place that has, like, something in the soil that gets people to act in a way. No, it's just because, like, there's a huge number of people, right, living in the same place. It's more likely that crime happens. So, like, if everyone from the city would leave and they would literally listen to what Tim Pool says, then you just move the problem from one place and you'd spread it around. So, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the comment section. Take care.